My name's Thomas Allen Moon, and I'm the author of Payback: Why the Top 1% Must Invest in the Rest and How It Can Renew America. I wrote Payback to deal explicitly with an ongoing trend that politicians of all stripes have refused to admit exists. Over the last 40 years, the gap between what it costs to live the American dream and the market income of ordinary workers has widened from a gully to a canyon. This canyon now threatens the future of the middle class, and if nothing's done, Americans with ordinary skills will fall out of the middle class. Payback proposes a tax policy that will enable capitalism not only to save the middle class, but to grow and make it more prosperous. Since Payback digs deeply into the weeds, I've recorded this Q&A to give readers a quick take on it. To make the Q&A easier for readers to digest, I've divided it into 15 sections. Payback is free to read on a website that I've created for the convenience of readers. It's my hope that Payback will contribute to a national dialogue on tax policy that I believe will take place sometime in the next decade. Now let's get started with the Q&A. Part 14. Fiscal responsibility means raising enough tax revenue to pay for what is spent. Question: what will make that happen? Initially, I think there'll be a lot of posturing by politicians about getting control over the national debt by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse in spending. But when it comes time to be specific, like which programs are to be cut and by how much, it'll become obvious to all that the old adage about cutting Social Security, Medicare, and other similar programs being the third rail in politics, touch it and you die, is even more true today than in the past. Why do you say that? Two reasons. First, the level of cuts is unprecedented, and second, more Americans are more dependent on social insurance than ever for their standard of living. Let's take these one by one. Explain what you mean by unprecedented levels of cuts. All right, just to stop the hemorrhaging in the debt to GDP ratio, it'll take a combination of sustained cuts in spending and increases in taxes of at least 6% of GDP. This is a huge amount relative to how much America spends. It's about one half of what is spent on social insurance programs and about the same that's spent on the rest of government, including national security. While no doubt some cuts can be made to general government spending and national security, I'm confident that these cuts will be trivial. Never has America had to simultaneously cut spending and or increase taxes by anywhere near 6% of GDP. Now, explain what you mean by more Americans becoming more dependent on social insurance for their standard of living. Over the last 40 years, retirement, healthcare, and post-secondary education have become less affordable to those households with incomes in the bottom 90% due to income stagnation. Nothing hints that this trend is lessening. Any significant cut in social insurance will be felt by tens of millions of those whose income is in the bottom 90%. Every dollar cut from Social Security will lower the standard of living of millions of retirees. Every dollar cut from Medicare and the Affordable Care Act will deprive millions of Americans of adequate health care. And every dollar cut from student aid programs will deprive millions of students of the opportunity to get the post-secondary education they need to get a good job. Does this mean that you think the politicians will be forced to lower America's debt-GDP ratio almost exclusively by raising taxes? Yes, again, I want to emphasize that this is the earth-shaking moment I've been talking about when a large majority of voters come to believe that their standard of living depends on maintaining and expanding social insurance programs, and the only way to do that is by a huge tax increase. How certain are you that a large majority of voters will come to believe that a huge tax increase is necessary? Quite certain. I believe that most thinking politicians, and believe me, there are more than a few, have long known that someday America will have to enact a huge tax increase to make up for years of running up the national debt and to pay for the inevitable future increases in social insurance. With the choice of doing nothing taken off the table, I'm confident that the fear of an aroused bottom 90% bent on keeping their social insurance will trump fears of a defensive top 1% bent on keeping their taxes low. This concludes Part 14.